As far as years go, 2024 was not a bad year for anime. We got some new favorites like Dandadan and Solo Leveling, along with some continuations of popular shows like Frieren and Mashle. But it wasn't a perfect year, as we are reminded of the trials and tribulations of the Japanese animator. Blue Lock is one that definitely comes to mind. People in the later part of the year balked at the sheer lack of animation as these boys miraculously played soccer without moving an inch. I have heard good things about some of the later episodes though, and people at least watched and talked about Blue Lock, and it did all come out on time for better or worse. But there was an anime that came out last year that was worse than Blue Lock presented by PowerPoint. This show has a good source material, a good voice cast, and the studio behind Mirror Tights. So what could possibly go wrong? This is the story behind Whisper Me a Love Song. The Whisper Me a Love Song manga is written and drawn by Eku Takashima. It was published in Comic Yuri Hime, which is where all the great Yuri manga are published. If you don't know what Yuri means, its alternative name, Girls Love, is a little more straightforward to understand. The genre features two female leads who are either flirting or engaged in a romantic relationship. Yuri are known for their high drama, and the main characters rarely beat around the bush like in hetero romance stories. All of these statements are true for Whisper Me a Love Song. The story focuses on the relationship between Himari Kino and Yuri Asanagi. Hima is a first year in high school, and at the entrance ceremony, there is a performance by the Light Music Club, which her best friend's sister Aki is a part of. During the performance, Hima is captivated by the singing of the lead guitarist Yuri. Afterwards, Hima finds Yuri and tells her that she fell in love at first sight. Yuri is shocked but also happy because she has fallen in love as well. But while Yuri has fallen in love with Hima, Hima simply means she fell in love with Yuri's singing. The conflict of the series is Hima trying to figure out how she feels about Yuri, while Yuri tries to get Hima to fall for her. It is a great story about young love with a lot of drama through a love polygon featuring Aki, who has a crush on Yuri. Reading the manga, it is very obvious that this would make a good anime. Number one, the art is gorgeous. The characters all have great designs, and even though there is no color, the whole thing looks bright. And number two is that this is a music manga. Music manga are always lacking because despite it being the main focus of the book, you can't hear the music. So an anime adaptation would allow these songs to be heard and also make the art that much better by adding color and animation. On January 13th, 2023, it was officially announced that Whisper Me a Love Song would be getting an anime. In the announcement, we got information on the main staff. It would be directed by Sai Jinya, and the animation production supervisor would be Yokohama Animation Lab. These are the people who made Miru Tights like I mentioned earlier. And the animation production would be done by Cloud Hearts, which is a co-production company for Yokohama Animation. We will come back to them. The voices of the main two were also announced at this time. Yuri would be played by Asami Seto, known for her roles as Raftalia from Shield Hero and Nobara from JJK. And Hima would be played by Hane Shimano, known for Hima from Whisper Me a Love Song. Look, we can't all be stars. The additional cast members were revealed on March 17th, 2023, along with a teaser visual and the premiere date of January 2024. Throughout 2023, we got other reveals, such as the vocal artists that would be performing the songs, the titles of the songs Humming Love and Meritocracy, and the first key visual. But things started to take on an interesting shape when on November 10th, 2023, it was announced that the anime was being delayed until April 2024. This is hilarious because the back of the English edition of Volume 8, which released in March, proudly states now a hit anime, which is clearly a lie because how do you know it's a hit? It doesn't exist. Along with the delay announcement, we also found out that the director, Sai Jinya, was being replaced by Akira Mano due to health reasons. This is also when we got the first promotional video. The trailer is only 50 seconds long and it is very standard. It features narration from Hima and Yuri's voice actresses as well as the song Humming Love. The trailer looks good, lots of color, and the main two look great. The anime seemed to be heading in the right direction. Then finally, on April 14th, 2024, Sasakoi was released exclusively to High Dive. It should be noted that since this was airing on High Dive, you could see that the anime would have 12 episodes, and you could see the release date of every episode. Nothing looked out of the ordinary at this time. When the anime finally aired during the spring season, I was excited to start watching it. The voice casts were all doing a fantastic job. Hima's VA sounded great despite her lack of experience, and the other members had voices that fit their characters perfectly. But this show is a musical, so how are the songs? The songs are all performed really well. The vocal cast did a great job bringing these songs to life. My favorite is the song Meritocracy, which is the first song you hear from the rival band Loreley. You hear the song right after SS Gross performs, and when the grungy guitar comes in at the beginning, you know instantly that Shiho's band is on a different level. In fact, the song is so good it was used as the second ED. And speaking of, how is the OP? It's good. Wouldn't listen to it all the time, but it's good. And I already talked about ED2, so how is ED1? It's fine. Meritocracy is way better, which makes sense because the song that SS Girls plays before you hear Meritocracy for the first time is ED1. I didn't catch that when I was watching this the first go-around. But despite the songs and vocal cast being good, there was one glaring problem with the show: the look. Sasakoi is what I describe as a characters talking to each other show, so it doesn't need to have crazy good animation like Kaiju number 8, but the characters need to at least look good, and that is not what we got. Characters look off model all the time, the musical segments feature a lot of still images, and there are continuity errors within scenes like this microphone in episode 7. The show does not look good. But how did this happen? On May 30th, 2024, Twitter user PatStar1999 posted a thread with leaks about the production. These included having teams of 2 to 4 people work on entire scenes on different schedules with massive time crunches, episodes getting finished 48 to 72 hours before airing, and the biggest bit of info was that the entire staff quit before episode 3 because of bad work conditions, causing the studio to outsource to other companies. This means that after episode 3, every episode had a different team, people weren't properly credited, people were mistreated, working overtime, having to sleep in their offices, and in some cases couldn't leave their offices. This is why characters look off-model all the time. Different people worked on it with very little communication with each other while having barely any time to work. Unfortunately, stories like this aren't uncommon when it comes to the Japanese animation industry, and it is important to remember that the animators are doing their best and the blame shouldn't fall on them. It should fall on the studios for allowing things to get this bad in the first place. After this information went public, the official website announced that there would be 2 recap episodes airing on June 8th and 15th, pushing back episodes 9 and 10 by 2 weeks. They would air on June 22nd and June 29th respectively. And at the same time High Dive updated to show the new release dates of these 2 episodes, it also changed the episode count from 12 to 10. Once episodes 9 and 10 released, things looked grim. The animation looked fine, but it seemed the pacing of the show was being changed from the manga in order to hit a specific part of the story. Let's take a break from the nightmare that is this production and talk about something positive, the story between Aki and Shiho. In addition to Yuri and Hima's love story, we have the characters Aki and Shiho. Shiho was the lead guitarist and singer for SS Girls before she quit, causing Aki to convince Yuri to join. It is unknown why Shiho left the band, but she is being a real bitch about it, constantly getting under Aki's skin about her new band Lorelei being better. Shiho challenges Aki to a battle of the bands and even takes Hima as her manager as a way to get at Yuri. Shiho is a real troublemaker and a great villain in this Yuri romance. Shiho is my favorite character in this story. She has some great facial expressions whenever she gets pissed off. You can feel her energy coming off the page as she initiates one of her schemes. It is very obvious why Shiho left the band and is mad at Aki. It's because Shiho liked Aki, but Aki chose Yuri over her, and then Shiho got even more pissed off because Aki seemingly allowed and even encouraged Yuri and Hima to get together. It is a very telegraphed and simple love polygon, but it is executed brilliantly thanks to Shiho not wanting to take any of this lying down. And it all comes to a head in Volume 8, which is my favorite single volume of a manga I have ever read. We'll start at the end of Volume 7, where Hima figures out why Shiho left the band because Hima knows that Aki likes Yuri. Shiho is shocked to find out that Aki could admit her feelings for Yuri to Hima and not Shiho, even though Aki and Shiho were seemingly best friends. That brings us to the beginning of Volume 8, where we see Shiho's feelings for Aki in flashback form. You really feel for Shiho in this chapter. Her and Aki have great chemistry, and you can understand why Shiho fell for her. And then the moment comes when it all came crashing down. Shiho has written a note confessing her feelings to Aki, and when she goes to give her the note, she finds Aki with Yuri. Aki is complimenting Yuri's singing and trying to convince her to stick around longer, but Yuri playfully smacks Aki's hand and leaves. Shiho starts panicking, but she tries to calm herself down and convince herself that the two of them are just friends. But then Aki does the most unnecessary thing ever and rubs the hand that Yuri touched against her cheek. Immediately, Shiho is destroyed as she rips up her note, running off crying as we see the words "Love Shiho" fall to the ground. This scene is gut-wrenching. The composition is genius, with the note in the foreground and Shiho's crying face in the background. Shiho tells Hima to inform Aki that after the culture festival, the two of them are done. When Aki hears this, she comes up with the plan of confronting Shiho in a heart-to-heart in private behind the school. Hima calls Shiho behind the school. Note, Hima showed up late to this meeting because she was too busy making out with Yuri. Trust me, this is important. When Hima gets there, Aki ambushes Yuri and Hima leaves. Shiho wants to leave too, but Aki stops her, saying that she doesn't understand why Shiho left the band, but Aki is willing to hear her out so that they can, quote, be friends again. This page perfectly illustrates why I love this series. The top panel shows Aki beautifully smiling. She looks so bright as she opens her heart up to Shiho, hoping to reach her once friend. And the bottom panel features Shiho with a completely different expression. In classic Shiho fashion, her face says it all. This volume cements that the story between Shiho and Aki is just as good, if not better, than the love story between Hima and Yori. I know I just spent a lot of time just explaining the plot, but I think it is important to illustrate how good this part of the story is so that you can understand why the anime skipped a ton of chapters in order to get to this part. The anime skips a lot of Hima and Yori moments in order to go right to the Shiho and Agi moments. However, there is some good stuff that gets missed when it comes to Hima and Yori. The festival arc gives a good look at how Yori handles jealousy and provides our characters with some growth as they deal with this. But I can understand wanting to get to the cultural festival in the anime because I wanted to see this part animated, but I didn't want it to come at the expense of the main two. Episode 10 ends with Shiho's failed confession to Aki, which sets us up for episodes 11 and 12 to cover the cultural festival whenever they decide to come out. For months, there was no information on when we would see episodes 11 and 12, but we did find out that the Japanese Blu-ray volumes were being delayed until January through April of 2025 instead of the previous release window, which was September through December of 2024. On December 28th, 2024, the final 2 episodes were dropped on High Dive to no fanfare. The episodes don't look that bad. In fact, I actually like the way they adapted that page I talked about earlier, but my biggest problem is the fact that these episodes completely shift the focus off Yori and Hamari and focus solely on Shiho and Aki. The main 2 characters are barely in these 2 episodes. There are tons of Yori and Hima moments that are cut to make time for the other 2, like that makeout session I mentioned earlier. Told you that was important. I get why they put the focus on the B couple here, but it seems so bonkers for the main characters to take a back seat in their own show. Delaying an anime indefinitely and releasing the rest at a later date is rare, but it isn't that unique. Something similar happened with Zom 100 in summer 2023, but the studio Bug Films is still around and is making Witch Hat Atelier, which is more than I can say about what happened to the studio that made Whisper Me a Love Song. On December 18th, 2024, Cloud Hearts, the studio under Yokohama Animation that animated the series, closed its doors after filing for bankruptcy. I've never heard of an anime so bad that it bankrupted the company that made it, and following that, on January 7th, 2025, the Blu-rays were officially cancelled, because of course they were. Whisper Me a Love Song had so much promise. I can't stress enough how good the manga for this one is, and you should definitely read it. But the anime dropped the ball, and it isn't the fault of the animators. The blame falls on the people in charge who push for the show to be made on a tight schedule. Sadly, I don't think this will stop, but if you needed an example to show why these practices are bad and don't produce good results, you have one. Thanks for watching. I know this video was pretty negative, but if you need something to watch that is more positive, I have a video recommending 5 good romances that you might not have heard of. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. And with that, sayonara.